Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faithful Service Reflections on Faith and Political Life with Representative Juan Vargas. My name is Professor Michael Peppard, and I'm a professor of theology here and also on staff at our current Center for American Catholic Studies. And I'm honored to be hosting the Congressman today in conjunction both with our current center and also my course, Religion and American Politics. And those students from my course are here, and also some others from around campus. Our plan for our time with the Congressman is that he is going to begin with some opening remarks, brief opening remarks, talking about his time, his past time with the Jesuits and his connection to his political career. I have a few questions for him, conversational questions for him after that, and then we'll open it up to some of my students in my class and potentially to anyone else who's joined on to the Zoom. So as you know, there is a Q&A function where you can pose a question that I can then pass on to the Congressman. We're very, very grateful that he's here, and I'll just say a very few words about his bio and then let him tell you more about himself. Congressman Vargas was raised on a chicken ranch in National City in California, one of 10 children, a very thriving family. And his father immigrated to the US from Mexico in the late 1940s and was part of an agricultural labor agreement between Mexico and the United States. As a young adult, he entered the Jesuits, the Catholic religious order that is the founder and caretaker of education here at Fordham. And he worked primarily with disadvantaged communities, orphan children, displaced people in El Salvador. And his 4 years with the Jesuits were very formative on his commitment to social justice and his commitment to public service. He pursued family life following the Jesuits, and then eventually also pursued political life, starting with the San Diego City Council in the early 90s and moving up through to higher and higher office to Harvard Law School, where he was in the same class, I believe, as future President Barack Obama. And then eventually Congressman Vargas went on to run and win a seat in the US House of Representatives in the 51st District of San Diego, which is known for many, many things, but of which my favorite is fish tacos. And I think that we are all in the debt of your district for the gift of the fish taco to the world. So Congressman Vargas, we're so happy to host you, and please introduce yourself to our students. Happy to hear from you.
Well, first of all, Professor, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be with you and your students, and I believe maybe my good friend Tom Massaro, Father Tom Massaro. So I was in the Jesuits for 4 years, and of course with Tom for 2 years there at Fordham. We were at Murray Weigel. After 4 years, of course, with Tom and I lost my faith completely, and I became an atheist. April Fools. I didn't insult that today's April Fools. But no, just the opposite. Tom was great. In fact, it's kind of funny. I was going to say, the Bible in John chapter 1 says, can any good come from Nazareth? The question for me was, could any good come from Floral Park? Where Father Tom Massaro is from. But anyway, as you said, I'm from San Diego, born and raised here. Went to school at the University of San Diego because it was a Catholic school, and I thought I might have a vocation. I was a very religious kid. During my time at USD, I did learn about the Jesuits. They were very involved in a lot of issues surrounding the poor, and I've always been a Matthew 25 kind of Catholic. So I got very involved with them and really fell in love with the order, and I thought that maybe I had a vocation. So I entered the Jesuits after college. 2 years here in California, basically worked with immigrants that were coming up from Central America. There was a lot of immigrants coming up at the time from Central America because of the wars there. There was a big war going on in El Salvador. big war going on in Guatemala, civil war, terrible thing. But anyway, so I worked in the society here. Society is what we call the Jesuits, and worked in the society here for 2 years. And then they sent me to Fordham. I wanted to go to Central America. They sent me to Fordham. Again, Murray Weigel Hall was there for 2 years and loved being a Jesuit. After 4 years, I thought that maybe I did have a vocation, but it wasn't to the priesthood. It might be to get me married. And so I left the Jesuits. I went and taught in the South Bronx for another year, a place called All Hallows Institute. I'm not sure if it's there. It was run by the Christian Brothers. I think like down by the Yankee Stadium. And then I applied to law schools. I applied to different ones and decided to go to Harvard. So I went to Harvard 3 years. And the time I was there, I got married to a Ram. She's from Fordham, Adrian. We've been married now a little over 30 years. And I came back to San Diego, started practicing law, and then really decided that I wanted to do something more than just practice law. So I got into politics. I lost an election first, didn't do so well. As I told you earlier, I ran the clean campaign and got my clock cleaned. So next time I ran the not so clean campaign. Not really, but the next time I learned, you're in a rough and tumble life here, when you're a politician. But anyway, was on the city council for some time, and then state assembly, state senate, and now in Congress. I really have enjoyed politics. I remain, a very religious guy, and involved in a lot of things associated with the poor and trying to help. And anyway, I look forward to asking and answering any of your questions. I won't go on too long because I know I want to give time to have people ask questions. But I would say that, again, my view of God, of Christ, is the driving force in my life, continues to be. And I certainly try to do, and do the things that I believe are right in the world, associated again with the notion that God exists, that it is Christ, and you better do something, if you really do believe, come on, don't waste your life. And all of that has been super rewarding in a personal way. I've met great people, wonderful people throughout my career, whether, it's people working in the sanitation department in San Diego. You find out a lot of people working in sanitation are very religious and try to do the right thing and help work. All the way to now, one of my best friends, or a real friend, is David Beasley, who runs the World Food Program, who's trying to figure out how to save 270 million people that are marching towards starvation. And he's a good old boy, one of these conservative Republican good old from South Carolina, who is very, very much on fire trying to figure out, because he is very, very Christian, Jesus oriented, trying to figure out how to get these poor people so they don't starve to death. But anyway, you find great comrades along the way, great life. And I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to the questions of your students. And I'll shut up now and let you ask the questions.
Thank you so much. So you alluded to your time in the Jesuits here at Fordham in the 1980s. And I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit more detail about how your time with the Jesuits shaped the rest of your career. Were there specific emphases, specific spiritual practices, any particularities that you can help us kind of connect the dots through
Sure.
the rest of your time?
Sure. Well, one of the things that every Jesuit does is he goes through something called a long retreat. And the retreat basically is a 30-day silent retreat where you go through the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. And what it does is it basically focuses you on what you think is really real in the world and life, and what really matters to you. And for me, that was very, very important. God was always, I inherited my faith. My parents were very Catholic. My grandparents were very Catholic. I inherited it. I love it. I, don't know a time that I didn't think Christ was real and important and, as real as you are. And, but in the Jesuits, it focused it more onto what are you going to do with your life? God gave you an opportunity. What are you going to do with your life? How are you going to do things for the great honor and glory of God? And that really helped me. So that long retreat helped. And then I started doing very practical things in the Jesuits, helping poor people. I really enjoyed that. And then when I got to Fordham, there was the big fight you guys still have, I guess, between philosophy and theology there. The department was tough. Some of those old Jesuit guys were tough, but they did instill in me sort of a worldview that made sense. You work really to make the world a better place, and that's our obligation. That's what we should do. But at the same time, doing it doesn't mean you should be miserable or anything like that. Just the opposite. You should be joyfully doing it, and you'll find that great things come your way, especially in the form of people. And so the Jesuits were very, very formative in my life. And again, it's given me sort of the theological and philosophical way of looking at life and making sense of it. I mean, I think I always would have been a very religious person. I think I always would have been someone with deep faith in Christ. But this gave me a way of looking at the world and trying to address it that makes sense to me, and it continues to make sense.
Thank you. You alluded there to connections you have about religion with other members of Congress and kind of reaching across the aisles or combining your forces on certain projects. From our outside, and my students in my class, we talk a lot about what is the appropriate role of religion in our democratic, pluralistic society. We talk a lot about how much religion is the right amount, for lack of a better word. Civil religion is a term that's often used to describe this. And we can see the speeches, we can see the public rituals of mourning or of combinations of religion and patriotism that we see on display. But what we can't see, Congressman, is what's happening behind the scenes. And when the cameras are off at your morning prayer sessions or in side hallway discussions or office discussions in Congress. And I'm wondering if you would do us the honor of pulling back the veil a little bit on that. What are the ways that religion is operative, faith is operative in Congress that we wouldn't see?
Sure. So when I was in the city council, really, there was no issue about, prayer groups or faith or anything like that. It was just, my own perspective of what God was and all. When I went to the state assembly, it was interesting because mostly Protestants, they had this very conservative prayer group. But I thought, well, I think I'll join. Someone invited me and I said, well, I'll go. It turns out I was the only Catholic. Everybody else were Protestants. But I brought my perspective of Matthew 25. When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick, you healed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. And I became deeply involved in that prayer group. I didn't know that they had a national group too. It was a state prayer group. And virtually everyone else were Protestants. I really was the sole Catholic, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the camaraderie. They questioned me some issues. Obviously, I'm a very liberal Democrat. I'm not kind of a moderate. I am a real liberal Democrat. And they were very hardcore right-wing Republicans. And yet we became friends. We became friends, and we did. And then when I went to the state Senate, same thing. I was involved over there. And then because I did have the connections to the state assembly, the prayer group even got bigger. Then when I went to Congress, I got involved in the National Prayer Breakfast, which I didn't know was associated with the state ones, but it was. And after 2 years, I became the chairman of the Democratic side of the National Prayer Breakfast, the one that they say La Familia or something crazy, Protestants out there doing crazy things, which is not true. If they even had a HBO special about us. But anyway, the truth of the matter is, though, that I do go every Thursday that we're there. We go to this prayer group, and we have one person come and share his or her sort of faith journey. And it's been fascinating because I've been in the Congress now for, my 9th year. So I've heard, hundreds of people literally come and give their faith experience. And you get to know people well. I know a lot of right-wing nutballs, like Louis Gohmert. Real right-wing nutball. He's one of my best friends. I love the guy, and he loves me. I mean, he would never say anything negative about me, and I'd never say anything negative about him. And he thinks I'm crazy, and I know he's crazy. But it does enter into everything we do. We're very religious sense of what we believe, and we can talk about that. And we do talk about that all the time. We challenge ourselves, but again, knowing that my politics are very progressive. And their politics are very Neanderthal. Just the way it is.
So I'm really floored to think of you being friends with Representative Gohmert. It just seems like such different worlds there. But that's the hopeful and inspiring thing. So this Thursday prayer group, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me ask him maybe a more difficult question.
Sure.
We who are not politicians sometimes look at the political world as a world of performance, that people are they put on various outfits and masks, and this gets made fun of, in election season, when all of a sudden somebody's a hunter, or all of a sudden you roll up your sleeves at the factory and put on the glasses and the helmet, all that kind of stuff. So there's a performativity in retail politics for sure. Do you think that's happening with religion in our politics? Do you think people perform faith in order to be accepted or look a certain way with their constituents? How do you see it from your side?
Yeah, well, I absolutely think that's the case with some. There's no doubt. So on the Republican side, and I know them pretty well, I know most all of them, about half of them are fakes when it comes to, in my view, they're fakes. And about half of them are not. I mean, they really profoundly are Christians. They don't have the same view of Christ that I have, but they're profoundly Christian. They do, and they challenge me on issues. And of course, I challenge them right back. But they're not put on. That's who they are. And I think it's a positive. I wish we could change their mind on some issues with the poor and immigrants, and get them to see that aspect of Christ's mission and what he was attempting to do and what I think we should do. But certainly they're put on. Now, on the Democratic side, people try to hide it. So if you were to ask me, like, who's probably the most religious person in Congress, I would say Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is profoundly religious, super Catholic, pious. I'm not pious. I do wear a scapular because my mom might be watching. No, because you have to. I prefer my mom. We all wear scapulars. But I'm not a pious guy. I deeply believe in Jesus and his mission, but I'm not a pious guy. Nancy Pelosi is very pious. The child of Crete, the little baby of Crete, or whatever it's called, Prague. She's into all that sort of stuff. And when she talks to us on the Democratic side, some of my Democratic colleagues who I know are atheists, because we argue about it, not arguing, friends, we talk about it, go, Holy Father has said that we have to do this. And she means the Pope, and she means it. She's not being derogative. She really means it. This is what we have to. And she sits there and brings it up in a very religious. Now, she doesn't bring that up so much in public. She does a little bit, but profoundly Catholic. And then when, I can't share all the things, obviously, some of them are personal, that she came to the Thursday Club. Everybody was always saying, wow, I didn't realize, how Catholic and Christian she really is. She really is. Some people challenge on some of her views, but she is profoundly Catholic, profoundly religious. Yeah.
Well, that's an amazing example. I mean, we're seeing the public civil religion so much more in the Biden presidency than we have maybe ever at that level. But in terms of Congress, a lot of it we don't see. It pops up at things like the National Prayer Breakfast that you mentioned, and I know she's spoken at a Hispanic prayer breakfast, a speech that I've sometimes assigned in class. So that's a really fascinating example. Can I follow up a bit on the Democrats have to fake it side of things? Because sure. I'm glad you balanced that answer. I was going to ask that. One of the big changes that my students are studying and will write about is the dramatic rise in the nuns, the unaffiliated people who check none on a survey for religious affiliation, right? And most of that rise of the nuns has come out of Christianity and especially Catholicism. So affiliation with official Christian denominations drops, unaffiliation is rising. And a huge part of that unaffiliated are Democrats, right? A huge part. So it's I guess just to follow up, it's your sense that religious Democrats are having to perform secularism or perform atheism or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's the case. Although it does sound funny, the rise of the nuns.
I know.
I mean, it's like the nuns on the bus or something. Rise of the nuns.
Yeah, it sounds like an apocalyptic movie about women in habits who are zombies or something.
The flying nun, or the rise of the nuns. But I think you're right. I mean, for example, in my district, it's 70% Latino. Most of the Latinos here are Catholic, and so everybody knows I'm a pretty religious guy. That's just who I am. People accept that. In fact, I can see over my official office. You can see over my shoulder across there. I mean, that's just who I am, and if people don't like it, they can vote me out of office. But in a lot of the districts, they're pretty progressive in the sense of, they don't want politics mixing religion. They think that that's a bad thing. So a lot of my colleagues who are Democratic, who I know are pretty religious people, never bring up the context of why they're doing something, because they think it's the right thing to do because of, again, the social gospel of Jesus or anything like that. They'd never mention the word Jesus. That's like mentioning, there's something really bad. Because again, they're afraid of these non-affiliated people. Although it is interesting, I have to say that we've brought it up a few times, and I'm very involved in it, the National Prayer Breakfast. I did have a chance to have dinner one time in a small group with the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama, I got a question asked to him, and it was fascinating because this young lady, the daughter of a very good friend of mine, a member of Congress from Alabama, and she said, what does he think about religion? And he goes, it was stunning. He says, "Oh, I think people should be atheists." And I was like, it wasn't April Fool's either. Like, whoa. He goes, "Yeah, too many wars, too many fights have started over religion. It'd be better if people were atheists." And I thought, oh, well, that's funny coming from the Dalai Lama. But it is, in a sense, the rise of the nuns, that notion that religion does start a lot of problems, that religion creates the problem, not solutions. I mean, I understand that. There's something to that, I think.
Yes, we in class we've analyzed all the way back to George Washington's Thanksgiving Day proclamation, which talks about the necessary interconnection between religion and morality, implying that one cannot be moral without being religious. And of course, that opinion is not strongly held today by a significant number of modern people. But that rise of the unaffiliated, I do still think presents a political challenge for the United States. It also presents a challenge of what are the other value systems that are replacing what were primarily held by their religious value systems. So we could go a lot of those directions. I think I have two more I'd like to ask, and then I'll throw it over to a couple of my students. Another thing we've talked about a lot in our class is the rise of the religious right, in United States history, and the question of whether there is such a thing on the left. And this is a very live question, I think, right now in the United States, with people like Reverend Barber, but also an actual PhD in theology reverend being elected to the Senate in Warnock. So could you give us your couple minutes on this from your seat? Is the religious right, how does it look to you? Is it still a major player politically? In what ways? And do you think there's a counterpart, or like some others say there is no counterpart on the left, that it's really not there?
Well, it is interesting. There's no doubt that there's the religious right that has risen on the Republican side, and you have a whole bunch of these guys that are, religiously right wing, and couldn't, by the way, get elected some of their districts if they weren't. I mean, I really do think that they would not get elected. The thing that kind of throws everything into, I think, a little bit of the mix right now is Donald Trump, because here comes Donald Trump. Well, personally, I don't think he believes in anything, but he starts off as a leftist, then he becomes, on abortion issues, on gay rights, and then all of a sudden he becomes a right wing guy, and all of a sudden he goes through all these divorces, cheats on his wife, is with prostitutes, with pornography stars, and then the religious right grabs onto him, and then the religious right, has him as their exemplar, and I think that kind of is throwing a little bit of a twist into that, because I think the Republicans are twisting in the air trying to figure out, wait a minute, this isn't working out exactly the way we expected. So they're having some issues right now, and I think we see that in society, and we see it certainly in Congress. On the Democratic side, I think there's a whole bunch of us that are lefties because of religion. I don't think I would be a lefty if it wasn't for religion, but I think there's a whole bunch of us. But we're Democrats. We're not organized. We're Catholics. We ain't that organized. but I do think we exist. I mean, I do think, you push someone like Nancy Pelosi really hard to find out, why are you so liberal? And you'd find out it's because she's a Catholic. That's why she's so liberal. I mean, she does believe in the neighbor, she does believe in Jesus working in the poor. And she doesn't go out there and she doesn't say, let's organize as a left-wing group, but that's why she does that. I mean, note that, and now I've gotten to know Nancy really well over the years. That's why she does it. That's who she is. And there's a whole bunch of us like that. We're just not organized.
Yeah. So how do you all who are progressive and self-identifying Christians and Catholics, how do you all handle pushback from official U.S. Catholic teaching, a U.S. Bishops Conference? During the Obama administration, the chief antagonistic arguments were, of course, about the Affordable Care Act and the HHS mandate about contraceptive healthcare provision. I guess, how personally and how do you as a caucus manage those conflicts?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. I mean, I go to church every Sunday with my family. I'm a very religious guy. And one of the things that I've always feared was that one day I would go up to communion and the priest would say, I'm sorry, but you can't receive communion, and how devastating that would be to me personally, but also to my family, because of my views, because of my politics. The bishop here I've known well. The priest where I go is a pretty conservative priest, but a wonderful, wonderful pastor. So they've never done that to me, but it is something that's certainly in my mind. So I've never personally had a real conflict with it, but I'm thinking about contraception. I mean, I believe in it. Of course, it's crazy not to believe. And I think it's a ridiculous thing that the issue about, the gays and what to do about the LGBT community. I mean, God does not make mistakes. One of my brothers is gay, and I love him as much as I love any other of my 6 brothers. The truth of the matter is, that I think the church is wrong about that. And so I have no compulsion to saying the church is wrong, absolutely wrong about that. And we should change our views, and certainly working for that. And women being priests and women being able to do all the things men can do, absolutely, we should change all that. Abortion is the tougher one. I think abortion's a terrible thing. I think it's a horrible thing. But at the same time, I also a practical guy, and I see that the people that believe that abortion's a terrible thing and it should be outlawed, they're the ones usually fighting against all these programs for the poor and programs that would help these children if they were born, or programs that would help these women who are pregnant. They're the same ones cutting all the damn programs. Then some of my atheistic friends, they're the ones fighting for these programs. For me to look at it and I say, we're in a pluralistic society. This issue is not an easy for people. But for me, I look on the practical side. I think it's a terrible thing, but I do think that women at the end of the day have the right to make that decision. I think it's the wrong decision personally. But at the same time, I look at my conservative friends and I say, you guys are all in favor of, child until the child born. And all of a sudden it's a welfare recipient or an anchor or some other terrible name that you apply to this child. I mean, what the hell happened to beautiful child? It's a beautiful child till it's born. But I've I've never had a problem yet with the church. I mean, I always try to tell the truth as I understand it. We happen to have now a pretty progressive bishop, the new bishop. I don't think he'll have any issue with me, my views. But who knows? I mean, again, it's something I can't control.
So it sounds like you view it primarily. First of all, thank you for your candor in these answers. Second of all, it sounds like you see it as something between you and your bishop. So you have a view of it as you're not in a conversation with, the U.S. Catholic bishops or Cardinal Dolan or someone else in some other diocese, but it's really about you in San Diego and whether you were in full communion with your diocese. That's how you see it.
With a little exception. The exception I put in, I do have a president, the second Catholic president we've ever had. Yeah. I know Joe, and Joe Biden's a great guy. I've known Joe Biden for a long time. He's very, very Catholic. He's kind of like Nancy. I mean, he really is. I mean, he's a very pious guy. If you talk to him about his mother, he doesn't like to miss Mass on Sunday. That's one of the weird things. I'm on foreign affairs, and when the Republicans, when we're in charge, have to take someone from the Democratic side. Now, we Democrats, we have to take someone from the Republican side when we travel internationally on what we call a CODEL, a congressional delegation. So you have to take somebody. Well, when some of these real right-wing nutballs were going to travel, they couldn't find anyone except for Walt, because I go to their prayer group. So they'd ask me, and I said, come on, find somebody else. But I'll go if nobody else does. But one exception: if we're on a Sunday, I've got to find a Catholic mass. I won't go unless there's a Catholic mass that you can show me that I can go to. Well, it's the same thing with Joe Biden. He doesn't want to miss mass on Sunday. Oh, it's our mom. We do not want to miss mass on Sunday. So I have mass on Sunday in Egypt. I've been to mass on Sunday in Russia. All these Catholic places, they find them. So I'll travel with them because they need me to go. But it's the same thing. So when Joe Biden became president, and the presiding bishop, or the Catholic Conference of Bishops, the president this year, the Archbishop of LA, criticized him, thinking, "What the hell's wrong with you? Did you be happy you finally got a Catholic, president here that wants to help the poor? Why are you criticizing him on the things basically you don't agree with him? Why don't you look at the positive? You look at the negative." And some archbishops push back, which I'm happy about.
Yeah. You brought up abortion, so I want to ask a brief follow-up on that.
Sure.
In my course syllabus, the students vote on hot topics, right? So each time I teach it, they have a set of things they can vote on, of current events that are out there to build the syllabus around for part of this semester. But I never remove abortion from that. So that is, I make sure it's always on the syllabus. And even if they don't want to talk about it, I believe it has to be on the syllabus every semester for religion and politics because of its staying power as a lasting issue. So when you brought it up, the most, I would say the most powerful lobbying organization on the Democratic progressive side is Planned Parenthood and other related groups. Do you feel like you can push back? You said, I'll quote you, "It's a terrible thing." You said it's a terrible thing. Do you feel like you can push back against these powerful lobbies on any matters of policy or rhetoric or messaging, or do you feel like you cannot?
Oh, no, I feel like I can, but I don't think that they're necessarily wrong. In other words, when they say, women should have a right to an abortion, I think they're right. I do think they're right. I would be lying to them if I'm going to push back. No, I don't think women should have that right. I do believe that they have the right to have an abortion. If I was able to impose my view of the world on the United States as a pluralistic society, people wouldn't like it, because they'll say, well, you can't get divorced either. You talk about Jesus talked very clearly about divorce and said they're a really rotten thing. And, you commit adultery, you make your wife commit adultery, and all these other things. So I look at it and I say, well, that's not practical either. So if someone were to say, we're going to outlaw divorce, I'd say, well, I'm not in favor of that. Even though it's a terrible thing, I'm not in favor of that, because it's not just Catholics in this society. There's other people that have different views, and something so profoundly intimate and personal as this, they make their own decisions. I have my own views. They have their own views. I'll live my life, and I'm never going to get divorced. I'm never going to have, I know my wife feels the same way. We would have never had an abortion. I hope my kids feel the same way. But I wouldn't push back against them, because I actually agree with. Now, when it comes to the issue of LGBT community, I'm as progressive as they are. Should transgender people be in the army? Hell yeah, they should be. Should people who are gay and lesbian be able to marry? Absolutely. No reason not to. I don't believe in lifestyles, whether you're straight or whether you're gay. You have these lifestyles where you cheat on your spouse, you cheat people. I don't believe that. I don't care if you're gay or straight. You can't cheat on people. That's wrong either way. So I'm against lifestyles, if you're going to call it. But I have gay friends who are married now. In fact, one of the most moving things I've ever experienced is a buddy of mine in Congress. He and his husband were going to adopt another child, and this child had HIV. And I said, wow, you guys are so brave. He says, Juan, all children had HIV, because in our community, we're used to it, so we don't look at that as a child that we can adopt. You'd maybe look at it that way because you're straight, you and your wife. That's not the way my husband and I look at it. And it brought me to tears. I thought, wow, isn't that a blessing that God has given this couple they would take these children that the rest of us really, let's be frank, wouldn't, or if we did, we'd have, great sensitivity in doing it, or alarm. They joyfully accept a child that has HIV, as part of their mission as a family, and they live as a wonderful family, which other Catholic, because these guys are Catholic, one of them would live like that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So my last question, I promise, before turning it to the students, has a visual component. And
Yeah.
I know that you've thought deeply about issues of immigration, the part of your own family's life story, and they're an enormous part of your district that you represent. And so here, an image you've probably seen before, one like it, of Catholic Mass at the southern border in Nogales. Part of my childhood, I grew up in Tucson, and actually I remember in 5th grade went over the border to the Mexican side of Nogales to play in a chess tournament. Little nerd that I was, playing a U.S. versus Mexico elementary school chess tournament. So I know this area in my memory. But this image, I think, spoke to a lot of people about the role of religion in the border crisis. And another one that I want to show, which is not as well known, it comes from Thomas Kiefer, who's a janitor at the Customs and Border Protection Facility in Ajo, Arizona, and he's an amateur photographer, and started compiling photos of belongings seized from migrants at the border. And this one, of course, captured my attention from his series of photography. And so I wanted to use those images just to set up the basic question, but it's a hard question. How do you view the role of religion in the politics of immigration? How do you view that intersection in your work and in your life?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. Again, maybe let me see if I can one up you here, Professor. So,
are you going to bless us now over the Zoom?
No. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to read this. No olvidado, paz y justicia, not forgotten. This was of a child crossing the border with his parents. It looked like his parents. We couldn't tell because the animals had eaten their body so much, but it was a little body. And this cross was made by a child here in San Diego, saying that this child is not forgotten. And he's certainly not forgotten for me. It was a child, again, that was crossing to try to get a better life in the United States, found bodies out in the desert here, and they'd all died, of course, because of exposure. So it's certainly something that's very meaningful to me. I've been working very hard with the people here in San Diego, because now we have now 750 girls that have crossed the border and presented themselves as unaccompanied minors in our convention center. We expect to get about another 500. So we'll get up to about 1,500 girls. And I work on this very much. One of the things that I do as a politician, saying, we've got to help these people. It's the right thing to do. Now, this is where I get in the fight with my right-wing nutball friends on the other side, because they consistently vote against these people. I find this interesting because you're always talking about how profoundly you're Catholic or Christian or whatever you are. Virtually, not all, but most of the people that are coming to our border and trying to get across are either Christian or Catholic. Very few atheists. No, I don't know if there are any atheists. Some are Muslim from other countries too, but the majority of them are Christians. And how is it that you use these terrible names, to describe them? And how is it that your policies are to throw them back into the cartels or the misery that they live in without trying to show them some dignity as a human or some compassion as a fellow Christian? I mean, how can you guys do that? And they say, well, of course, they're illegals. And that's when we get into discussion. And, it doesn't go anywhere. I haven't convinced any of my colleagues on the Republican side. And also, there's practical politics that if they were too close to undocumented people, they couldn't win re-election. And some of them have told me that, wanted love to help, but it's just, we can't. But I think it's a terrible thing. I mean, come now, these are people looking for a better life. We haven't created an opportunity for them. It's not like, you come before the golden door, as they say, the lady by the golden door in New York, where you could just come in and, if you're Irish, if you were traveled in first class, fine, come on in. Second class, come in. Third class, you'd have to go, or steerage, you'd have to go to Ellis Island, wait a little while to make sure you didn't have some sort of disease before you could come in. Well, these people are arriving, and they're in the most difficult situation, and we should help them in some way. Now, we can't obviously take everybody, but we can help a lot of people. And my colleagues, these good Christian men and women on the other side, don't want to help any of them. I mean, it is pretty tragic.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for your candor and your stories to all of my questions. And we have about 15 minutes left. And I want to first call on one of my students named Mia. And this should work where I can enable her to come on the screen and ask you a question. And I'd ask the students or anyone that asks a question just to briefly introduce yourself, say your major and maybe where you're from and something like that before your question.
Awesome. Hello. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah,
okay.
You can show your video too if you want. So we can
it's only letting me mute or unmute. There's no option for video, but I can go ahead and ask regardless.
All right, let me see if I can do something different there.
Sure.
Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Give me 1 second. I think I can do it.
All right. Hello. Can you guys see me now?
Now I can see you.
Awesome. Hi, my name's Mia. I'm a senior. I'm in Professor Peppard's Religion and Politics course, even though I'm a communications major, so not really related in that sense, but a very exciting and relevant course, originally from Boston, Mass. So my question has to do with what we studied recently. We analyzed Obama's 2006 call to renewal speech, where he discusses faith and politics. And when discussing the Bible and democratic politics, he says, "We understand the biblical call to feed the hungry and clothe the naked, and we can affirm the importance of poverty in the Bible." So as far as for you, would you say, your motivation for humanitarian work, like in El Salvador, and your projects like Operation Restore, would you say those are guided with a combination of biblical and political principles? And furthermore, how do you view, this balance of faith-based work, but also work for justice with government, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. And thank you for the question. Those are some beautiful windows behind you too. It looks like you're a church or something. But for me, it's only biblical, not political. Just to be fair, I mean, the truth of the matter is the work that I do is because I believe deeply in the Bible. If not, after Harvard, I would have gone on and stayed at one of my large firms and made a lot of money and would have been very happy, I'm sure, doing that. But I do believe deeply in our mission to try to make the world a better place and to honor. And so that's why I do it. Now, is that fair to do that? I mean, is it fair that my views are based on the Bible? I think so. It's odd, though. One of my good friends in Congress is a guy named Jared Huffman. Now, Jared Huffman is one of the few people, and you may have read about him. He's one of the few people that actually came out and said, "I'm an atheist. I'm officially an atheist and don't believe in God." And yet we look at stuff, we vote almost identically. Here's a guy who a lot of people tease me Father Vargas because they know my background and they know I'm in the prayer group. And here's the guy that said, and yet we always tease because you take a look at our votes on environmental issues, you take a look at votes on poor people, you take a vote on almost everything, we're identical. And here's a guy who came out, "I'm an atheist," and here's a guy that says, "I'm very much on Jesus' side." And yet our voting patterns are exactly the same, almost exactly. We almost vote almost every time exactly the same. At one time we voted differently, oddly enough. It was an environmental issue up in Oregon where I was on the side of the sea, he was on the side of the salmon. So he thought they should kill the seals because the seals were eating the salmon. I just thought, no, why are you killing the seals? But anyway, other than that, I think we've always voted alike. And I think that that's perfectly fine. There's no reason why I should have to change my views or votes. I vote because of my biblical perspective.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you. Next, I want to call on Hasibe. I see she's there. So let me pull this up and let's see. Are you there, Hasibe?
I'm there. Hello.
So
Hi.
Please introduce yourself and then you can ask your question.
Hi, my name is Hasiba Hadaba. I'm a sophomore at Fordham University. I'm double majoring in international studies and English and minoring in philosophy. So since I'm on the pre-law track, I kind of have a question to ask you based on like what made you choose to decide the path of politics. So bear with me, these questions all relate to the same thing. But I was going to ask, what made you interested in law and what made you want to go to law school? Were there like any alternative kind of careers that you were thinking of? And how do you know that studying law and politics is for you?
Well, first of all, I enjoyed law. I thought law was terrific. I really did. I had a great time there. Met great people. The practice of law wasn't as cool as I thought it was going to be. You know, you get into these big firms and you make a lot of money. That is true. And if you want to make a lot of money, that's only a place to go to. But I was fascinated by the notions of justice and what is fair and what is legal and how they intersect and how they don't. So I took a lot of philosophy, as Father Thomas Massaro said, the masters in humanity, the coveted and yet elusive mahum. But anyway, the matter is that politics and law and philosophy are all intertwined, and I've enjoyed it. I mean, I really have. Why did I pick law school? Well, I picked philosophy first, but no one wants to hire a philosopher. I thought I had to eat at some point. And so I thought I'll probably be able to eat and feed a family doing law. And again, I went to law school and enjoyed it. I would encourage anybody to go to law school. It's a great place to be. A lot of fun. And at the same time, you do get to figure out, what you think is justice and what you think is not. And I mean, I come out now after many years kind of thinking, and I'm a little bit of a what we'd call a critical legal scholar. I kind of believe a little bit what Robert Unger said at Harvard, that a lot of decisions depend on a particular legal notable. For example, you take a look at an action that someone does, let's say that somebody shoots somebody, and you may go to prison for a long time for shooting that person, or you may not. If you have a really good lawyer, you may get off. Or, you may have a very good lawyer, not a judge, you're going to go to prison for a long time. And it depends not so much on the objective law, but that particular legal notable, the good judge or the bad judge, the good lawyer or the bad lawyer, the compassionate prosecutor, the not so compassionate prosecutor. You get, the same action, but you get different results. And that's the particular legal notable. But anyway, I like law. It's fascinating. I like making law rather than practicing law. But again, I would encourage you to go. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thanks, Asibe. Next, I'm going to call on Thomas. Let's see.
That's not Massaro, is it?
It's not Thomas Massaro, no. He is in the room there. Are you there, Thomas? Or let's see. Perhaps not. Tom Massaro did have a question.
Oh, well, throw him on there.
Let's see if we can pull him up.
Oh, there's Thomas Roger.
So we got Thomas Reuter. We'll queue him up. We'll queue him up here. We'll see if Father Massaro is there too. So Thomas Reuter is another of our students and also an elected member of student government. So he can introduce himself and ask his question.
Great.
Thank you so much for talking with us, Congressman Vargas.
Of course.
My question for you, you touched on a little bit before, but it is, how do you remedy any contradictions between your legal and political opinions and the institutional stances of the Catholic Church? And the second part, how can the liberating or service-oriented aspects of Scripture be clearly and effectively utilized by congressional representatives in a pluralistic society?
Man, you sound like Tom Massaro in this kind of question. A lot smarter than I am. Well, it's a question. Again, I try to authentically, as I understand it, and my view of the world, which is of course what I believe in, basically the Bible. But there are conflicts. There's no doubt about that, and I understand that we live in a pure pluralistic society. I understand that. So I can't impose something I think we have real disagreements on. Again, I would take a look at divorce. I can't impose my view on others. I think that'd be a rotten society if I did. Other people have different views. I understand that. So I try to balance that off. But at the same time, I try to be faithful to what I believe in. So when it comes to issues like taxation, I think that we should have high taxation on wealthy people that afford to pay, so that we can do things for people that are struggling and attempting. But yeah, hell yeah, I believe that. The hell with your pluralistic society. You're going to pay more taxes, buddy, because you're making a lot of money. And I think that that's fair, because you're not preventing that person from making more money. It's fine. You want to make $100 billion into the pandemic, like Elon Musk did. Okay, but we ought to tax that. But when it comes to issues that are profoundly personal, where there's a difference in views, that's where it's harder. And I impose too much of what I think a theological views on others, because I don't think that would be right. And if there's balance, and whether we strike the right balance or not, I don't know. I try to follow the Constitution also. The Constitution is very clear on some issues, and the Constitution, I think, is wrong on some issues and has been wrong on some issues. And we attempt then to change the Constitution. But I take an oath, to defend the Constitution, and I really do try to do that. And there are some instances, I think, where that the Constitution is up to what it should be. But again, I try to. That's those are the rules that we live under. Nice to meet you. Of course.
Thank you so much. So Thomas has his own political campaign going on, I think, too, here on campus. So he's
good for you. Well,
good spirit.
You look like a president to me. I went to school with one. You look like a president.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
So for our final question here, we'll throw it to your old buddy, Father Tom Massaro, and we'll let him have the final shot.
First of all, I just want to say how lucky Dr. Peppard students are to have this forum. It sounds like I've seen your syllabus, Michael. It's a great course. And by the way, I teach on the graduate level a course with a similar title here at Fordham. I'll offer it next spring, Religion in American Public Life. One of the topics that I try to cover is the regional differences. I wrote a mischievous question to Congressman Vargas about the difference between the California that he's from, most of his life in Southern California, and the New York that he was only in for a few years. I've spent most of my life in New England or New York. But I would just invite people to reflect, maybe through your course, Dr. Peppard, about the regional differences. So there are parts of this country that have more, I would say, communitarian ethos, parts of the Midwest, the very progressive upper Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, even Chicago. Other parts like the Southwest, Congressman Vargas's home area, and where you grew up, I didn't know that until today, Arizona, where there's more of Hispanic influence, which has their own influences, ethnic enclaves that have different political views, Irish Americans and Italian Americans and Black Americans, where they're more concentrated, have different views too of politics. So Congressman Vargas, do you have any just brief reflection on the differences between East Coast and West Coast for political cultures?
Well, again, based on, I think it's chapter 1 in John, I don't think, can anything good come from park? I think no. I think that Nazareth, but I mean, plural. The truth of the matter is that there are these regional differences. There's no doubt about it. And we're changing pretty dramatically. So you did not mention the Northwest. So the Northwest used to be this rugged individualism. I mean, they're out there in Seattle, in nature, it rains all the time. But now, because they've become so wealthy, because they've made so much money on high tech, they've become, I think, much more progressive sense of helping others, and not so much that individualism that you see either out in the West, even, or the communitarian aspects you see more in the East. But it is interesting. It does manifest itself politically around the country. I'll have to be honest with you. It was interesting that not a lot of things surprised me. I've been around in politics for a long time, seen a lot. And I hung around with a lot of, even though I'm a liberal Democrat, I've hung around with a lot of Republicans who are pretty darn conservative, certainly in California. But when I got to Congress, the one thing that I did not understand, didn't really have a feel for, is how racist the South was and is. How racist it is. So I had the chance to go down to the South a few times with John Lewis, of course, who passed away, now, a great hero of many of ours. And I went down to the South, and the things that people say still, in California, that are Republicans, conservative, the things they say there, it's like, whoa, that would never pass in California. And I challenged them a couple of times. They even, in a conversation where I was with some friends, well, friends of friends, a couple of members of Congress, went to their house and they had a party there. And this was, a nice thing and all that. And someone used the N word, and I thought, am I going to say anything? And I thought, well, I'll let it go as if I didn't hear the first time. The second time I said, can I just stop you right there? I said, this is the second time you've used this word, and I don't think it's appropriate. And I'm sorry, if I own you, but I don't think it's appropriate. And they said, well, you don't understand, Juan, you're from the West. No, I understand big time, but it was wrong. And that's the one thing that really did surprise me, that the racism is so deeply embedded in the South. In my opinion, totally, I don't think so. And that, I hope that changes. But that's the one regional aspect that I didn't understand. I've been I lived in New York. Right next to you, you snore, you make a lot of noise, and you're very unpleasant. But I'm just kidding. But, I've been in the North. I understand the North fairly well. Then I went to New England, and I enjoyed New England. That was great. But I didn't understand the South. Now I understand a lot better. I thought, oh, no wonder there was a civil war. No wonder there's problems down there. And no wonder they continue. No wonder they passed a law in Georgia that says you can't give people water or food in line when they're voting. It really is a racist, awful culture there that has to change. And it is changing, around Atlanta and places, but it's still pretty awful.
Well, it's as if you have seen my syllabus and we're perfectly connecting to what we're talking about in class right now. We're in the middle of a unit on the struggle for racial justice in United States politics, and we just finished discussing in class today a short story by Alice Walker, poetry by Pauli Murray, and next week we're talking about Fannie Lou Hamer's fight for the vote and the religious inspiration of the civil rights movement between Fannie Lou Hamer and Martin Luther King Jr. So that fight is still ongoing, and that's one of the big aspects of the centerpiece of the religion and politics class. So we are certainly centering it as you might hope we would.
Great.
Well, we are coming to the end of our time here, and I know you're very, very busy, and so we're honored and grateful that you took an hour with us, took an hour with my students, and I know that so many of your comments and answers have sparked thought for them, and I can't wait to hear next week where they take your thoughts. My final question is that I know we're not allowed to give you a gift of any value as a congressman. We have to avoid any conflicts of interest and corruption. But I think in our Fordham bookstore, there's plenty of gifts of lower value that could be mailed to your office. So perhaps a Fordham tie would be one, or a Fordham whiskey glass or a wine glass, or something else. So should we send it, your final question, should we send it to your San Diego office or your DC office?
No, don't send anything. Obviously, I've enjoyed this tremendously, and that was my joy. I don't need anything. That's very nice gesture, but you don't have to send anything. I do have to say it's interesting. There's a few of us that are Fordham graduates in Congress, and we Bill Squirrell, who you know is from New Jersey, he comes to a lot of Fordham games when you guys have Fordham games. So he always calls fellow Ram, and any of us who have any association with it. And of course, when Father McShane comes, I'm always happy to go and meet up. So we're very proud of our Fordham heritage, very proud of the school. And again, I would tell the students listening that, I hope that the world turns out to be a great place for you guys. It really is a wonderful place out there. Fordham really does prepare you for it. My wife's a Fordham grad, incredibly well, a lot better than I am in life. It's just an honor to be with you guys. I really did enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I hope we see you again soon, and good luck with all the important work that you have in front of you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Pray for us.
Have a blessed Holy Week and a happy Easter as well.
Thank you. Pray for us. We need.
We will. Bye-bye.